Welcome, and thank you guys for joining us at Churchill County Museum for our spring lecture series. My name is Leticia Webb, and I'm the education curator. We are excited to bring you a new season of engaging talks that highlight the history, culture, and stories of our region. Your support helps keep these stories alive, and we are glad that you guys are here. Tonight, we are pleased to welcome Shannon Hooper, an accomplished artist and cultural advocate from right here in Nevada. Shannon is a member of the Paiute-Shoshone tribe and is deeply rooted in traditions and the cultures of the Northern Paiute and Western Shoshone people. She earned her Bachelor of Fine Arts from the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe, New Mexico in 2023, and went on to complete her Master of Fine Arts there in 2025. In addition to her academic achievements, Shannon is widely recognized for her remarkable accomplishments as a 3-time international and national Indigenous pageant title holder. She uses that platform to promote culture, visibility, and positive representation of Native people. Her artistic practices span an impressive range, including drawings, paintings, photography, textiles, and fashion. She's especially known for her customary arts, demonstrating time-honored skills in beading, sewing, and weaving. Through both customary and contemporary fine arts, Shannon reflects the vibrant designs, shapes, and patterns, including the vibrant and bold colors often used by the cultures of the Paiute and Shoshone people, inspired by the Nevada landscape. Tonight, she is joined by her mother. Deborah Hooper is a member of the Paiute-Shoshone tribe, born in Reno, Nevada, and raised between Reno and Yerington. She attended Orvis Elementary in Reno, and she later graduated Churchill County High School. Deborah pursued higher education at the University of Nevada and Western Nevada College. She became a homemaker, a wife, and a well-known culinary and pastry chef within tribal communities. Throughout her life, Deborah has created both customary and contemporary arts and crafts. She enjoys beading, sewing, and traditional basket weaving. While attending Western Nevada College, she explored ceramics and custom cake design, earning ribbons for her ceramic pieces in the college annual arts shows. Deborah also enjoys painting with a focus on acrylic and watercolors. Her work has been recognized at the annual Fallon Cantaloupe Festival, the County Fair Art Show, where she was awarded the Reserve Champion ribbon in 2025. Her artwork was featured at the Reno Tahoe International Fine Arts Show in 2025. Most recently, her work was exhibited at the Native American Heritage Month Art Show at the Oaks Park Center in November. Please join me in welcoming Shannon Hooper.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Shannon Christy Hooper. I'm a member of the Fallon Paiute-Shoshone tribe. I'm also Yamba, Western Shoshone, and Pyramid Lake Paiute, Kwesedu. And I just want to say it's an honor and privilege to be here this evening to be a part of your annual lecture art series and to speak. It's really an incredible lineup of artists you have for this year, and to even be advertised with the same heavy hitters in the art world, that's really an honor. So thank you for having me. And so we'll go ahead and get into it. So Ho'at Nobi means Grasshopper Studios. So how I came up with Grasshopper Studios as my art practice, Grasshopper was my great-grandfather's Indian name, Dave Christie. And in his honor, I decided to name anything that comes out of my studio and art practice Grasshopper Studios. So that's how that came to be. So again, my name is Shannon, and I want to thank you for that wonderful introduction. I recently graduated from the Institute of American Indian Arts in 2025 with my Master in Fine Arts degree. And going to college in New Mexico was challenging, but it was also very rewarding. I'm not going to lie, I got very homesick. I love Nevada so much, and I grew up here. my whole life, and to go out to college, it was definitely different, but very rewarding. And with that being said, I've had all these wonderful opportunities that had happened. And right now what we're going to do is I'm going to share with you a bit of my art practice and what I was doing during college, and I hope you enjoy. All right, and this is my mother, Deborah Hooper. We just had her introduction. I have always been taught within my community and within my family, it's always out of respect to honor those who come before you. It's a cultural sense of honoring your grandparents, your parents, anyone who supported you, loved you, and helped you throughout your process. And throughout my lifetime, my family has been there for me through everything. And if it wasn't for their love and support since I was a little girl, to be honest, I don't know what type of artwork I would be making, because it's so influenced by my culture and the household I come from and grew up with and the people around me. So this is my mother, and she appears often throughout the presentation, so I wanted to make sure she's introduced so you know who she is. All right, so the next 5 slides I'll be introducing is my BFA exhibition that was held in Santa Fe, New Mexico at the Institute of American Indian Arts. And when they asked us to present a line of work and what that represents, for myself, I wanted to honor my ancestors. And so I designed a line of a recreation of Paiute-Shoshone dresses, and they're traveling through time. So with 5 dresses in total, I started from the beginning. And the individuals you see here in this picture, that's actually my great-great-grandmother and grandfather. That's Chief Cowich and his wife, Jenny Wilson. And that is a print that I had created. It's white ink on black paper. And the dress you see is the recreation of the dress she's wearing within the picture, and that's my interpretation of what that dress might be like today, and along with the beaded collar. Okay, and so this one is about 1920s, 1930s. This is the next dress in the line of evolution. And this is, the individuals you see in this picture is Tootsie Bowser and Mary Dalton. And if you've ever walked through the Toi Takata exhibition, Mary Dalton is also featured here at the Churchill County Museum. She actually took good care of my grandmother when she was a little girl, before my grandmother went to boarding school at the age of 9. And this was my way of honoring her by making this dress. And my grandmother was Frances Hooper. And now this is coming into the 80s and 90s, and the style's changing, and the colors are getting more vibrant and upbeat, and our people are having more access to numerous things, fluorescent colors and things that are happening. And so with each set, there's a print, there's the actual dress itself, and then there's the beaded collar. The beaded collar you see here is the one that I'm wearing right now. All right, and then this is the next dress, more contemporary. This is what a lot of the indigenous girls love to wear today. They love the big, bright, bold colors and ribbon skirts, and they love the contemporary fashion, contemporary jewelry, lots of bling. And as you can see, there's the imitation elk teeth and feathers. So if you ever attend a powwow or an indigenous gathering, this is often the type of regalia you'll see today. It's contemporary and it's always changing, and there's always fads coming and going. But it's very beautiful if you ever get a chance to see that site. And this dress here, for me, when I was making this, doing this process, this is the dress of the future. What would a Paiute-Shoshone woman wear to a fancy event, a gala, a ball, an evening out, a night on the town? I made this dress in honor of my mother, Deborah Hooper. This dress was chosen to be the blush pink in honor and representation as well of the wild roses that grow here within the state of Nevada. And sometimes you see them when you're hiking in the mountains or out on the desert. But the idea was to keep the old 1908, 1905 dress style with the big puffy sleeves and exaggerating that pioneer puff at the bottom with the hoop skirt. This is an imitation of what that's like. And the beadwork you can see is a smaller representation of the beaded collar. The beaded collar itself with the matching earrings and belt set is made with 24 karat gold seed beads. And it's also made with cut beads of black, white, and periwinkle. And these individuals here, this is my family. So this is, in the middle is my great-grandfather, Dave Christie, Grasshopper. And next to him is his sister, Katie Christie Frazier. And of course, this is my mother off to the far side. And this is printmaking. So I went in and I mixed all the colors, and then I blew up the images, and I did the gigabytes and transferred it over to silkscreen printing. And then I came through with acrylic paintings and added the traditional designs. So this is some of my work that I do on my free time or for fun. And so the one that's called the warrior look is of a tiny tot boy. And this is all watercolor that I have created. And the photo next to it is called the wild horse. My grandfather, Homer Hooper, had actually drew this picture on a 8x10 regular piece of paper a long time ago. And when I was in college, they said, you have to pick one of your favorite artists and you have to recreate that drawing and revision it, reimagine it. So I actually seen this picture and I freehand that image of what he drew from his memory. And I went and transferred it onto a bigger scale picture, and I did it in charcoal and graphite pencils. But the original drawing itself that he created was only this big. And then I created a much larger scale off of that. So this one right here is called the Paiute Jackrabbit. And this is in representation of me when I was a little girl. I used to love playing in my grandparents' yard. And out on the reservation, the jackrabbits were plentiful at one time. We would have church or Sunday dinner, and I remember being outside playing, and there would be jackrabbits everywhere. And sometimes this was the color of the desert. The wild rice grass was this shade of yellow. And sometimes when the sunset would go down, these were the colors of the sunset that were produced, that were hitting the land as we're out in the evening sunset. And then again, the traditional patterns. This one in particular here, I was really impressed with and proud of. It was selected to be in the Institute of American Indian Arts MOCNA exhibition. And at the time, I was really honored to be seen, and they asked me, what's in line for this picture? What are you going to do with it? And I was thinking, oh, I'm going to take it home and hang it on my wall. And I was just so proud of it and the details and the work I put into it. But the museum decided that they wanted to purchase this one. So this one is a part of their permanent collection at MOCNA. And MOCNA is ranked #3 in the nation for Native American contemporary art. So I was very honored that they selected this piece out of that exhibition. I'm also a contemporary dancer. I dance in powwows, I dance women's traditional and women's fancy shawl. I do my own textiles. But again, none of these things would be possible if it wasn't for my grandmother, Frances Hooper, and my mother, Deborah Hooper, because at a young age, I started learning how to bead and sew in the household. And then as the years went on, I joined a dance group called Sage Spirit. And then we had more mentors that came. And those mentors taught us other tricks and trades. And so with all the knowledge that I gained over the years, I'm able today, as a grown woman, able to make my own regalia, in confidence that it'll be all right. And I come up with the colors and all the designs. And now I also bead regalia for my family members. All right, so we're getting into some different things now. So while I was going to school in New Mexico, the students are allowed to have a booth during Indian Market, Santa Fe Indian Market. And it's right there in the middle of the plaza. And when I was there, I had a booth and I was selling my artwork and prints and beadwork and things. And these two lovely ladies came to my booth and they purchased these necklaces from me. They're the imitation elk teeth necklaces, contemporary. And I don't know if any of you have been to Indian Market, but it's an amazing sight to see. There's thousands and thousands of people and celebrities, and so many people go there to shop. And it's a full week event where there's constant fashion shows and a lot of things to do and places to see. But Vogue actually walks the street plaza and they take pictures of people who are in the highest or the newest contemporary fashion or things that catch their eye or that viewers that they might like to see. And so they took this picture, and then I went to sleep, woke up the next day, and my phone was on fire. People were blowing me up on social media. and people wanted orders because I was recognized for the work that I had created and that was in this photograph that was later published to Vogue that following day. And I thought that was mind-blowing because I had no idea that something like that could happen and travel so quickly, and to have that recognition. And people were coming to my dorm room and just kind of saying, oh, well, did you see this? And I was kind of like, I'm not sure what you guys are talking about, because, you know, I just was going about my day, but I thought that was really extraordinary for something like that to happen to me. Here I am, just a college student and just going about my way. But I thought that was very exciting to be recognized at that time. And that was in 2022. So as I'm going to college, I'm meeting and networking and coming across all these awesome different people, and we're learning about each other. And this gal named Simona Real, she's very talented. She has her own fashion line, and she was looking for models. So I applied to be a model in her show. But once we started collaborating, she found out I knew how to sew, and she said, I have this idea for you, but I want you to wear this puffer jacket, but I need help executing on how we're gonna make this. And I said, okay, so we got together and we mingled and threw some ideas around, and this is the end product, is this jacket here. And this is the jacket that I also modeled. And so during Santa Fe Fashion Week, I believe it's held in May, this gentleman here wore the jacket, and New York Times just happened to be there coming out the side door, and he was taking snapshots of all the models. And this particular image made it into the New York Times. And this is one that we collaborated on, and we both took the time to sew and trial and error, but it worked out. All right. And so while I was at school, I was introduced to a lot of fun new things. Sometimes people were asking me, like, are you a model? And I was like, oh no, I draw, I don't model. And then they're like, oh, that's kind of odd, because I wasn't aware that a lot of the girls there, they are, you know, they're very multi-talented in doing everything. And for me, I was just like, I'm here to paint, and I am perfectly content with that, and that's what I want to do. I want to advance in painting and be, you know, work my skills out, basically. And then, so next thing you know, I'm applying for this fashion show because the artist wants me to be in her show. And then next thing, the door opens to more opportunities, things that I had no idea were possible. And so that's us in the very top fashion show. That was at the Indigenous Pathways Festival. And it went live locally throughout New Mexico. And then on the bottom, that's one of the photo shoots we went to. We went into Albuquerque, and we met up with a professional photographer, sorry, tongue twisters. And then the college itself was looking for students to advertise. So while attending school, they take pictures and they use them for promos and advertisements. And this is one of the advertisements that I was in. And they use my photo off and on. From time to time, I come across them. Sometimes I'm asked to be a hair model, a hand model. Yeah, I've never heard of, you see things like this in movies, but I thought it was interesting. And here's some more images of modeling. One of the greatest honors I had was modeling for Bina Abeling, and she is the author and illustrator of the Fashion Sketchbook. So I was a live model for her fashion classes, and that's some of the drawings the students did of me during that time. Being a part of the college has many opportunities, but for me, I was very thankful to get scholarship opportunities. And when that door opened, I was invited to sing and say the opening prayer at their annual gala. So I've been singing there for the last 4 years. And the far photos, I believe they're on your left. Yeah, left. That's at the gala. And while we're there, I had the opportunity to meet amazing people. So at the very top corner is the Ralph Lauren team, part of the executive board. And below them, this past time I went, I was able to eat and enjoy dinner with the AMC Dark Winds cast and crew. So you could see the director and the actors in the front there. And that was a great night. It was very exciting. And so this particular year was in 2004. I had my very first solo exhibition
as a fine artist. And to be honest, I was always hoping one day my first show would be in Fallon, but I had no idea I would be asked to set up in New Mexico in Santa Fe, especially during Indian Market Weekend. That was an amazing honor. And to have the amount of people coming through to see the work, because a lot of the artists, they're very well known and they're coming from the Northwest, they're coming from this, the Southwest, they're coming from all angles of the country. And then there's Paiute-Shoshone there. So I was very happy to have that representation. So that's the banner you see, that's them advertising my show outside the museum art gallery. And then below is when Ralph Lauren's team, they came to visit me because they advertised my show at the gala. 2 days later, Ralph Lauren's team came through to the gala to see my artwork and to see the textiles. And the textiles I had were all those beautiful dresses that I just showed you. And I was really honored because they came, we had a nice visit, we took pictures. Shortly after that, I was awarded a scholarship for a whole entire year by Ralph Lauren. And because of the textiles within my portfolio and the custom dresses that I had made. And when you become a student in the master's program, it's a little harder to find financial aid. And so I was extremely grateful that the Ralph Lauren team and Ralph Lauren, the brand, was able to sponsor me for an entire year. It was really amazing. And so that's a little bit of that. All right, so sorry. After graduation from the BFA program, I applied for the Master of Fine Arts program. Knowing how prestigious it was, I was thinking, oh, okay, well, if I get in, great, and if I don't, that's fine, I'm ready to go home. I miss Nevada, and I was thinking it'll be fine, we could do online classes, and I wanted to finish my teaching degree. And so I ended up applying, and I did get in, and I was very, very surprised. So next thing you know, I did get to come home because it was a low residency program. And during that time, I had an amazing experience. It was such a great atmosphere, and I never knew that it could be so, I guess, fulfilling to be within this program and to meet so many Indigenous artists that were about this whole entire life of art and skills. And when everything was said and done, we got a special invitation to Venice, Italy, and that's what these pictures are for. So Jeffrey Gibson is a Native American artist who was selected to represent the United States at the Venice Biennale in Venice, Italy. And it is very rare to have a Native American on such a prestigious international platform. And with his connections, he decided to invite the Institute of American Indian Arts, and he requested the Master of Fine Arts program come and they do a presentation in Italy. And next thing you know, they're telling us we're going to Italy, and I remember thinking, oh no! I was excited, but also just a little nervous. I've never traveled so far from home before. I've traveled in the United States and on this continent, but to fly overseas, it made me a little nervous. But in the end, it all worked out. It was amazing. It was such a beautiful experience. And this is me and my cohort. We are getting ready to perform at the US Pavilion right then and there on the giant platforms, and then that's the US Pavilion behind us. And while we were there, we went to school for a week, learning Indigenous skills and having different professors, and we attended college at the campus there, and it was just amazing. And during that time, I was also able to do some modeling, so I thought that was great as well. And this is Jeffrey Gibson here in the middle. I'm very thankful that he invited us to participate in this wonderful event. And that's our cohort on the bottom. I was really, really honored because they asked me to sing and to give the opening prayer at the beginning of the week. So I was able to perform twice in Venice, Italy. And that was something that was very, very moving. A lot of people were asking me how I felt to be in Italy and to sing and to, just the atmosphere and to think about, because especially my peers, they know who I am, where I'm from, and what I do, but to be in a whole different country and to perform, what is that experience like? And I remember thinking what would my grandparents think? What would my grandparents say? Like, I don't think they'd believe me that I made it all the way to Italy, but it was just a fun thought and it was very moving, so. Okay, and then with that being said, so Jeffrey and his team, he had different galleries throughout the country. There was numerous people that had a hand in making this whole event possible. And with the amount of people, so even just from the college itself, there was about 50 of us that went over. And so it was a lot. And what Jeffrey had done was he had made a catalog about our experience in Venice, Italy. And it's called The Space in Which to Place Me. And within this catalog, there's a chapter dedicated to the college, and each of the students, we wrote our own little journal or memoir of our experience and what that was like. And there's also pictures of us enjoying Italy and the performance itself. And it was just very worth it, all of it in the end. I know we're not finished just yet, but this is my information if everybody's interested or anyone is interested in seeing what I'm doing next. I'm on social media, Facebook, Instagram, all that good stuff. And I try to stay up to date as possible so people can see when the next appearance is or where we're going from there. All right. When I was asked to come and to present to you this evening, I knew that I wanted to share something very special, something very meaningful to me. And this is actually a part of my Master of Fine Arts thesis exhibition. And during my time in school, of course, we have to have, a mock defense of our artwork and why we're creating this art. Why is it so important to me as an individual? And before we begin the presentation, and I just want to say that I think when I was given this presentation in New Mexico and a lot of diverse people were listening, I didn't realize that I was expressing further of why this is so important. Because specifically this is, how do I say this? It's a deal where, I have it written down here. Sorry. Okay, so maybe this will sum it up a little better. Weaving plays a major role in maintaining tribal identity in numerous tribal communities. But due to the combination of an ever-evolving world, the people of the Paiute-Shoshone tribe run the risk of endangering the cultural knowledge and contemporary art forms of basket weaving. And so for me, growing up in Fallon and living on the reservation, this is how I've seen things through my point of view, through my lifetime and my experiences and things that I have witnessed. And I want to acknowledge the people who were weavers before me, the people who will be weavers after me, and it's the idea of where I stand growing up as a child. I remember there were a handful of men who did the weaving. They made the Chuli houses, the Chuli boats, and as children we would go and watch on field trips to see how these things were made, and we would have hands-on learning, but the men did most of the heavy work. Or there was a handful of women weavers, but as a little girl, I remember they couldn't weave anymore because it was strenuous on their hands. Or for whatever reason, they had the knowledge, but they weren't weaving as much as time went on. And so this is just my point of view and my experience throughout my life. It doesn't necessarily mean that everybody had the same experience or that there's no right or wrong way. So I just want to acknowledge that, so we can have a better understanding of where we're coming from and what the story is about. So let's go ahead and start. Kwesedu, becoming a basket maker. So as my introduction, from a young age, I remember and always seeing numerous pictures of my ancestors, my great-great-grandparents, my great-grandparents, my grandparents, so on and so forth, on both sides of my family, as a Hooper, as a Western Shoshone, and as a Christie, Pyramid Lake Paiute. And I know stories about my ancestors, and these are stories that have been told to me throughout my lifetime. And so, for example, this is Togo, this is my great-grandfather, Dave Christie. The individuals that I'll be naming off, I have a short story about each of them. But don't worry, I won't share all of them. And with each short story is important because it tells that story about the weaving and how it comes together. So, for example, my great-grandfather, he worked with the University of Nevada, Reno, and he also worked with Berkeley, and he worked with Annie Peden, and they wanted to basically capture the lifestyle of a Northern Paiute man. And the same with Katie Christie Frazier. There's documentaries and short stories about little bits and clips of their life and how they lived that old traditional style. And in particular, that's where my grandfather comes in, because I remember hearing these stories of them having these documentaries and the filming and telling our family story. This is my grandfather Dave, and this is his wife, Mamie Christie. She was a master basket weaver. So at one point in time, she was selling her baskets, I believe in the 60s, for $25. So at that point in time, $25 is a lot of money. And to be a basket maker and to provide and to support your family, that was a customary art that she knew. This is my grandfather's sister, Katie Christie Frazier. She is very well known for her story. It was a happy life, and it talks about her life. She talks about her life on the Pyramid Lake Paiute Reservation, and her story of especially gathering willows. At one point in time, the willows were plentiful and she was able to gather, but then next thing you know, there was a no trespassing sign and they had to go and look for willows elsewhere. But I highly recommend these short stories if you haven't seen them. This is my great-grandparents, Art Hooper and his wife Alice Cowich Hooper, Western Yamba Shoshones. My great-grandparents, they actually made my father's cradle board woven out of willow, and my grandfather went and collected those willows while my grandmother weaved them, and they made that basket especially for my father. And one day, maybe, maybe my children or grandchildren will lay in that same basket. And we still have it, so we're taking very good care of it. So it's over, how old is it? I don't want to offend. My dad's here tonight, ladies and gentlemen. It's about 66 years old. And this is my grandmother, Frances Hooper. She did a lot of lectures and demonstrations throughout Northern Nevada at museums, at elementary schools, and she loved her people and her culture. And she loved weaving, and she loved gathering. So here's my mom. And my brother, and he's also here tonight, in the same cradle board that I sat in. And my mother is also a weaver. And so as you can see, the importance of these people that are in my life and these stories is passed down generation to generation to generation. This is my direct line and my direct story of how weaving came to be within my family. All right, so from the beginning, my grandmother Frances had always told me about Coyote, and since I was little, I can remember being very small listening to her say, "Coyote's the trickster, don't trust him." And I remember being like, oh no. But one of our creation stories is about Coyote. Itza is his name. And what had happened was Coyote was instructed to carry this giant, big, huge willow basket. And inside that basket was all kinds of noises, and Coyote was instructed to not open the lid. He was supposed to take it clear across the state of Nevada and make sure he gets to the other side. And that was his destination. But because Coyote was a trickster and he was impatient, and he was just very childish, he just could not keep his hands off that basket. He can hear noises coming from inside the basket. And so what Coyote had done was he was thinking, oh man, like I'm gonna look in that basket. He's like, oh, I better not. And so he just kept going and kept traveling. And finally, the temptation grew too big. Coyote, he went over there and he kind of looked in that basket. And the next thing you know, he flipped that lid off, and then all the Indians started jumping out of the basket. The Indians were climbing up the walls and they were running in different directions. All the tall, skinny Indians jumped out first and they were gone. And these Indians went that way and they were gone. And Coyote was trying to grab them and they were all too quick. And Coyote was thinking, oh no, they all got away and I didn't even get to my destination. What am I gonna do? Then he heard a very faint sound. And Coyote said, what? and he looked inside the basket, and inside the basket were the shortest and the roundest of the Paiute people that could not climb up the sides of the basket. They could not jump out over it because they weren't tall enough. Coyote thought to himself, well, they're all gone now. I might as well set them free. So Coyote dumped the last of the Paiute people in the Stillwater marshes. And that's the creation, one of the creation stories of the Paiute people and how our people came to be, because Coyote had carried a woven basket. And that's a story my grandmother used to love to tell me when I was a little girl. And so, of course, also within the beginning of time, we all are familiar with or have heard about the Spirit Cave Mummy. The Spirit Cave Mummy was found out by Grimes Point, and the archaeologists that found him thought to be only so many hundreds of years old. But once they have done all the archaeology and the investigating and DNA, they found out that the Spirit Cave Mummy was over 10,600 plus years old, dating that after they did the genealogy and all the work, all of the love and support, they found that he was a descendant of the Paiute people, which means our people have been here for a very, very long time. And that's one of the oldest adult mummies to be documented within the United States, counting a Native American indigenous boy that was found up north in the plains areas. But that is an idea of how long our people have been here. But what's also special about the Spirit Cave Mummy was what was found with him. When they went and they searched the area where he was buried and all of these things were found, they found these woven mats of tules. They were told that he was wearing, or they found he was wearing moccasins, and that there was tule reeds, and a lot of these little things that were proven to our people to be woven items. When I first started this journey, I was really set on having both Paiute and Shoshone representation, and there is, but I wanted my grandfather, the late Reverend Ernest Hooper, to translate Shoshone words to me. Growing up in my household, I was taught to speak Paiute. I don't consider myself a fluent speaker, but I know more Paiute than I do Western Shoshone. And so a lot of things had happened and things had changed, but in doing so, I decided to go ahead and keep the Paiute language and then later on name the artworks in Shoshone. And so right here, this is where I'm talking about Kwesedu, and it's becoming a basket maker, or Kwesedu, becoming a basket maker. Kwesedu, beginning a basket. And again, because there's so many different tribes, federally recognized tribes in the state of Nevada, there's 27 different bands of Paiutes and Shoshones, but specifically found Paiute-Shoshone tribe in the Stillwater Marshes is where my people come from. Okay, here we go, chapter 2. So I've seen a lot of amazing things my grandmother had kept. Because she did lectures and demonstrations, she had a lot of woven items and dolls and just little artifacts she picked up here and there. But one of the greatest basket weavers she always talked about was Tatsolali. And even as a child, we learned about Tatsolali in school. We go to the museums and we see her pictures. And I always admire her for the work she's done and thinking about the research of what her basket was a long time ago compared to the price and what it is now. One of her baskets sold, I believe, for $1.2 million. And just to think, a long time ago, the Indians were selling their baskets for a very small fare or price so they could feed their families. And to know and see and understand how vibrant these baskets are, how beautiful they are, and knowing that the price and times have changed so much, it's just an amazing, amazing thing. And she was part of my representation of artist influences. All right, and up next we have my great aunt, Mary Dalton. And you may remember Mary Dalton, she is actually a Paiute Paiute, and her work is actually here in the Churchill County Museum out in the front by the Paiute exhibition. And again, she took care of my grandmother when she was a little girl. So when I went into my grandparents' house, I seen pictures of Mary Dalton, Tootsie Bowser, and all of these beautiful Paiute women in front of these tule houses. And they often showcase the woven items on their houses. And this is some of the baskets that she had done. Another artist influence. When I was going about this plan of learning how to weave, what's the stories behind it? Why are these people influencing me? I had a lot of questions and exploring and knowledge that I wanted to know and learn about. So me and my mom and my brother took a visit to the Nevada Historical Society. And when we were there, we were able to see Datsolali baskets. And the museum curator, it was kind of funny. She said, a college student, oh no, she was thinking, she's like, well, a lot of people come and ask about aliens. So I wasn't sure if you were here to really learn, or if you were here to ask about aliens or Burning Man or, the fun extra things. And I go, oh no, I'm actually here to see baskets if you have them available. But right before they were able to put Datsolali's baskets away for just a short period of time because they're renovating. So I was able to see those baskets before they were put away for a little bit. And it was amazing. And then she said to me, well, maybe you've never heard of this artist. And she recommended Mary Lee Fulkerson. And Mary Lee Fulkerson is an artist outside of Reno, and she's a contemporary artist. So these are the baskets she made from the ground up. She gathered the items, she wove in the baskets, and then she gathered bits and pieces of things that would go inside these baskets. And each basket has a theme. And I thought that was so neat because there's so much love and dedication that goes into something so beautiful. And when you look closely, there's so many things that are just detailed. So one was about women's rights, and it was about the woman's right to vote, and all these little things that represented that era and time. And there were women that wrote small notes about their experience of having their first job or having that experience of living during that time, and they put it in this basket. So that's kind of an idea of what was stored. Okay. Excuse me for a moment. Okay, so once we started writing and thinking about why basket weaving, and at one point in time for my people, it was a way of survival. And I had to think about what's the idea behind the weaving. There's so many things that we use for weaving. We make our houses out of weaving. We can do the tule boats out of weaving. We're making willow baskets. We're weaving tule baskets, we're weaving ropes, we're making fishnets. There's so many things that weaving provided to the Paiute-Shoshone people. And once I thought about it, I was thinking to myself, okay, generations and generations and all of these things, and how do they line up? And I thought to myself, well, what type of weaving are you going to do? You can make a tule house. Sure, we can make a tule boat. And when I really thought about it, I knew I wanted to make a cone basket. And, well, what is a cone basket? And when I've done the research and went to the museums and studied about the idea of, for example, what is the name of a cone basket? And a lot of people like to refer to the cone basket as a burden basket. And when I was within the program, one of the professors had asked me, they said, well, what do you call it? No, that's the scientific name for these baskets, but what do you call it? And I was like, that's the cone basket. Just very confident, it's the cone basket. And then I thought about it and I go, no, wait, we have a name for that. I go, I'm gonna go ask my grandpa. And I was really excited to, because that's where I wanted to incorporate the Shoshone language, was naming of the baskets. And so I fixed it down to where I wanted to do the cone basket. And then I was thinking, okay, now we're on a roll. Why is it important to make this cone basket? And of course, it's that reflection again. I myself never learned to weave when I was a child, not full-on basket making. My grandmother, as she got older, she couldn't teach me because then she went blind. So that was always on our to-do list, but we never got to that point. And then next thing you know, years come, years go, and the older she got. And then at one point in time, she had taught my mother how to weave. And thankfully, my mother was able to teach me and to guide me also through this lesson of having the idea of where to begin and how to start. And my professors had also navigated me on what to look for and how are we going to answer these questions on this journey of weaving. And so it was interesting. We actually ended up at Santa Fe Indian Market, and there was an exhibition there called Inherent Memory. And me and my family, we went through the exhibition, and it was beautiful. This Inherent Memory exhibition actually happened to be Great Basin artists, but they were coming from all these different tribes, but I did not see any representation of Fallon Paiute-Shoshone. There were a lot of artists from Walker River, Pyramid Lake, going all the way up into Oregon, even into California. There was all these different artists that were represented in this exhibit. And even though there was no specific Fallon representation, I was still really excited to see it overall. Both customary and contemporary art that provided the cultural preservation. My favorite was Brittany Hooper, and she created baskets with wire, a different type of wire and rocks. And her representation of that was being at home. She took things that were from her homeland and she brought them to school with her in case she felt homesick, and she created these beautiful items that later turned into artwork that was later then seen in a prestigious museum art gallery. So I was really moved by that because I could kind of feel that similarity of being away from home and still wanting to connect with the loved ones and my tribe in that art practice. All right. And again, why basket weaving? So for me, I noticed there were breaks. So at one point in time, I remember being a little girl and riding in the truck with my mom and dad, my grandma and grandpa, and they would go to gather willows. My dad and my grandpa would have bushels of willows and they'd be carrying them. I remember being little, watching them walking along the road carrying these willows. And my mom and my grandma were there too. And apparently I found out I was 3 years old when I was having these memories that I always kept. I remember seeing my family gathering and working together to gather these natural resources for weaving. And my mom, so from that time as a little girl, and I also remember my mom and my grandma scraping and cleaning the willows in the kitchen or outside. It was a family experience and a memory that we've done things together, and that's how the children learn. But as I grew older, I noticed that we didn't weave or do those things as much anymore. And I didn't question it because I'm a kid. I'm doing other things, going to school and going to powwows and dancing and so on and so forth. But then again, there was a long break in that weaving process. And my mom, so for example, the last time she had wove was in 1993. And then 12 years later, her brother, Stanford Christie, asked her to make a cradle board because he was going to have his son. And it was a long time before, again, my mother wove since the 90s. And that was a big break. And then he's 20 now. So my mom took another break and she didn't weave for a whole nother set of years until I came along for the master's program and said, Mom, can you please be my mentor and teach me how to weave? Because I really want to do this and I really want to learn. And so then she came out of retirement and she taught me how to weave. But there was long breaks. My grandmother, she did the same thing. She hasn't woven since 1990. My auntie, Barbara Culbertson, she started weaving, like she witnessed it within the household, going with her her grandmothers, her aunties to go and collect, watch them weave. She watched and seen the process as a little girl, but she actually didn't start weaving until she was 40 years old. So another long break. And, and that's how things just happen for whatever reason. Maybe there was a drought, maybe the willows weren't plentiful, or the tules, or maybe there was other things that were at play. All right, here we go. So now, after I've done somewhat research and I started thinking about the very first semester of the master's program, the director said, you're not gonna be able to share everything you worked on, but we're gonna narrow it down to the nitty gritty. And I said, okay. Kind of panicked a little because everybody said, you should do painting. I said, oh no, you're not gonna get any work from me if we do painting because it takes me a long time. But so here again, this is the first semester, and this is my great-grandfather, Dave Christie. This is the image of him gathering and showcasing him wearing a cone basket. And with this cone basket, he's going out into the mountains in the Sierra Nevada, and he's got this giant hook, the stick, and he's putting it on the pine trees, and he's shaking it, and that's how he's getting the pine cones off of this tree. And he's putting them in the back of his cone basket. So as you can see, the cone basket is used to be worn on the back. There's usually a strap that goes in the front, or that strap could be moved to the head. So you can wear it and then still work. So if you're interested, this video clip is actually on YouTube. It's called Pine Nuts. And you can see 3 different individuals, including my grandfather, making the process of preparing pine nuts for a feed or the harvest. And so I decided to do the cone basket. We got the weaving down. I ended up exploring filming and photography and what that would look like. And that's me. All right, you guys can't see that, sorry. This is me experimenting with the photography. I'm wearing the dress that was in honor of my grandmother, and I'm wearing the cone baskets that she had made. The cone basket she had made, and I'm demonstrating with the winnowing basket that she had created. And so I'm very thankful. Before my grandmother had passed away, a couple years before she passed away, she had given me some of her precious heirlooms. And those are the items that I have used for my cultural presentations and such. And that's where these baskets came from. And my brother is the photographer, Shannon Hooper. And this was taken during the fall, during pine nut season. Second semester, started exploring with Polaroids, and that was amazing. And I have lots of Polaroids. I'm thinking honestly of donating them back to the college so we can have reference of this period in time. But this is me. I'm starting to make my very first larger scale cone basket. And this is the first cone basket you see right here on this first table. And I've never made a cone basket of that size before. I made one smaller one beforehand. So it's a learning process, and you can even see that it's in the beginning stages. Oh, and I must apologize. Again, I've never woven before. If I'm failed to say that. This is a whole brand new experience, and this is my very first time weaving. Okay, and that's the larger basket. Here it is. After I created the basket, I decided to take it back to the place where I had picked the willows. So when I was there picking the willows were all upright and everything was just straight and just beautiful. But when after I made the basket and returned, all the grass, the bushes, everything was knocked down. I'm hoping that's where the deer were laying before, and that's where they smashed all those plants and vegetation down. But I have other theories that my friends said it was Bigfoot, my peers, my cohort. So throughout this whole time of my process of learning, we're still in college and we're still having classes and doing academics, and we're actually having online critiques. So all of this work is being witnessed by my cohort, my professors, the director of the Institute of American Indian Arts, and they're watching us grow as we're creating all this work for our end of the year show, end of the graduation program show. So it was interesting to hear their input, but that's what they thought. All right, and so when we got down to the third semester, I was really curious about making these baskets, and now they're all, I'm pretty sure I know I want these baskets to be a similar size, and what are they going to look like, and doing the experimentation and having different mediums and how well they work. And when I wanted to pursue inviting the community or engaging others to be a part of something special, me and my family had held a special at the Walker River Paiute Reservation at their annual Pine Nut Festival powwow. We sponsored a dance special, and we're inviting all women to come out and dance with their favorite baskets. And when this happened, we only had a total of 4 women, and they were all elders that came out to dance with their favorite basket. It was either a willow basket woven for their head, or it was a winnowing basket or a cradle board, but they were all an older generation. And it was comforting, but at the same time, it's kind of that rotation of seeing that the times are changing, the generations are changing, and the value of having baskets or weaving within my, I guess in my era is a little different. You know, we're really thinking about social media and work and all these other things. So baskets were no longer as important as that for that survival purpose. So once we said, okay, well, we only have 4 women that are participating in this special, we're gonna open the special up. So we then invited anyone who was wearing a traditional garment that's Paiute-Shoshone or Washo to come out and dance. And then from there, we were able to, and that's our line of winners there on the bottom. We had about 4 prizes for each category. So tiny tots, 0 to like 3, and then juniors, so on and so forth, all the way to golden age. So we sponsored a big special, and we invited everybody out just to come and dance at that point. And that was when I was practicing the filming. So I did get that part on documented, and I asked for permission from the ladies if I could showcase their dancing as part of my critique for that special event. And then this is a picture of me. So as the semesters are coming and going, I'm learning how to weave, and I'm pulling it all together, and I'm experimenting with different mediums. And this is a picture of Billie Jean Guerrero. And she was one of the finalists of our dance special. And as you can see, she has a woven cap of willow, and she has her favorite basket, winnowing basket, and she's wearing a customary style Paiute dress. And a lot of the dresses that we see in powwow, again, they evolve, they change, they grow. A lot of the items also are very old. They're passed down generation to generation. Her grandmother probably wore that hat, or her grandmother or mother maybe made her collar. And it changes again. Then when the younger ones start to wear these items, those items will also be passed down, but they'll have a contemporary flair. A long time ago, we didn't have the fluorescent color beads, and we didn't have gems and rhinestones. At one point in time, there was only maybe a handful of selection of color beads: black, white, a green, and I believe a blue, kind of like a navy blue color. And so seeing all the beautiful things we have today, we're very spoiled. All right, and then this is the final and 4th semester. I've experimented with the different mediums, and then I decided to make a basket that was smaller than all the baskets that I had made. A cone basket that was small. And it was very challenging. It actually took me almost 10 hours to make because it was so small, and I didn't want to break the willow. A lot of love and care went into that basket. And then I also decided to make a large scale basket, a basket big enough to be proud of, and what that represents. And that's that biggest basket you see there at the end of the table. So that basket there has every willow that I've ever picked since the start of this program, down to the very first willow that I had scraped clean that my mother had shown me to scrape. And 2 years of willow picking and saving, I saved every little piece, everything I could, as much as possible. And all of those willows are reflected within that giant basket. All right, and then the customary work within the academy. I kept a journal entry of my outings and going out into the wilderness and finding these beautiful willows. My mom, she actually took me out to areas on the reservation where our family used to pick at one point in time. And it was a lot of fun. I actually sprained or rolled both my ankles our first day on the ditch bank. Yeah, dropped all my willows, and I was thinking, geez, if I had my cone basket already made, I wouldn't have dropped all my willows. Or if I started doing this when I was a little girl, you know, I'd be a little more knowledgeable on what to do and expect. Of course, I do go out into the wilderness and hike and run and all these other things, but it was great. I wouldn't change a thing. That was part of the process and part of the learning. And I did make it back to the car. So that's the important part. I got eaten alive and I rolled both my ankles, so that was good. And then, so that was part of that experience and enjoying my time with my mom, my brothers, my significant other. I was actually roping in a lot of my family to be a part of this process with me, and I didn't realize it. And it was great. We took family outings and we went and gathered and collected. We scraped together. And so everything that my mom was showing me how to make, she sat right next to me and she did her basket or weaving, whatever we were working on, and I had my own. So everything you see here, I made myself. Okay, and then for our plant research, did some heavy digging into all the wonderful plants that I was coming in contact with, and that was fun. And I also just all of a sudden had a vivid memory of me and my grandma Frances. My grandma and grandpa loved to be outside. We would go out to Yamba, to Reese River, and we did a lot of camping in the summer, a lot of hiking and fishing and sledding and all these just fun things, you know, outdoor life. And my grandmother, she would take me and my brother Brandon, I remember being really little, and when we were hiking, she would say, oh, like, you know, this is a willow, you know, this is what our people use this for, you know, and did you know it has a little bit of that aspirin in there, you know, there's a chemical inside the willow plant to help with pain, or, you know, and she would tell me these things, and then she would scrape that willow bark open, and then she would say, taste it, and then she'd have me taste it. So I remember being a little girl at a very young age, tasting these traditional plants my people used to use on a daily basis, all the time. And that's the same with Indian tea or wild Indian rice or all of these traditional plants. And that's knowledge that my grandparents had given me. But see, all that time, I just thought everybody was having that experience. I thought all of my cousins were having that same experience. My friends at school, the other Indian children I grew up with. And it wasn't until much later I found out that was very rare. And I was, you know, very thankful now that I think back about that moment in time. Or like, especially like going fishing. My grandfather would take us fishing, and I remember being like 3 or 4, and he was showing me how to gut a fish. And I was standing there with him. He'd do the cutting, and I would be gutting the fish right there with him. And that's a part of our way of life. And then we cooked the fish right there, and we would eat. But that's just an example of that knowledge, traditional knowledge they passed down to us. All right, and continuing on. So then I thought to myself, okay, well, I'm having a lot of this memories, reflection, knowledge of my lifetime and things I've learned, and it's been repeated to me constantly, but what about now? So once I started this idea of weaving and getting into all of this fun stuff and getting excited, I came back to my mom, and then we had a lot of reflection and talking about things about the weaving and how that looks like for our family specifically through our bloodline. And that's the same with the individuals that I have here listed. I talked to my aunt Barbara Culbertson, I talked to my mom, and then knowledge from my grandmother Frances Hooper. She passed away in 2020 spring. And then my grandfather, Reverend Ernest Hooper, he also passed away in 2023. So remembering and asking about all this knowledge and just keeping track of how important it is for me, my personal experience. All right, so, and what do? We want to honor those who give back to us in our community. It's a constant thing for me to always remind myself of these individuals and to say thank you. So this is a portrait drawing that I did of graphite pencils and pen of Barbara Culbertson. And You might see her around town, but she's a lovely lady and she enjoys doing basket making. And she was also part of the Native American exhibition. This is a picture of my mom. This is a picture of my grandfather, Reverend Ernest Hooper. A picture of my grandmother, Frances Hooper. All right, and then these are the baskets as you see off to the side, and I have the pictures of them here. This is a storyline of how they're changing throughout time. And this is my vision, or my creation of what a basket looks like today. And so the first basket you see is more of a early 1900s basket. It has the shells and it has the black and white beads. Seed beads weren't a thing yet. We're trading and exchanging for pony beads, bigger size beads, and just the love of the willow itself. And to be honest, this basket, I created this basket because if I was a woman in the early 1900s, I think this is how I would want my basket to look. If I were to wear it every day working and picking and gathering or storing items. So this is a basket that I would love to have. Kwiwi Siku, meaning it's the Pyramid Lake basket. And this is a representation of the Pyramid Lake. As a child, we spent a lot of summers there, and I have a lot of family there. We spent a lot of barbecues and parties and outings, and the colorful cotton material. At one point in time, I remember being a little girl and going to craft fairs in Reno Sparks Indian Colony, and a lot of the tables had baskets on them, and there were different styles of baskets, and this was one I always remembered I loved to see because at one point in time, I believe they were just different types of ripped material used to weave baskets. Or the people were finding other items to use to weave. If it wasn't willow, this one here is made of dowel and cotton fabric. But it's the representation of the lake. The bottom's the water, and as you go up, it's the evening sky. And these pictures were at the beginning of the program, at the beginning stages of the baskets. So when you get a chance to look at the baskets themselves, that's the finished product, and it has all the detail and intricate work on it. This one's called Toha'i Hobi. So during the 2 years of the program, I changed, I grew, I've acknowledged, I cried, I laughed. I cried because I wrote so many papers. And it was hard, it was difficult at times, but I pushed through. And I was really proud of myself. So this basket is a representation of a self-portrait. Toha'i Hobi is my Indian name that was given to me by my grandmothers. And all of the items that you see on the basket as representations of things that happened within those 2 years. This one's my favorite, one of my favorite baskets. This is the Hamawanana. And this one is translated in Paiute. So when the director told me, you're not gonna be able to showcase everything you've ever made, I said, aha! And I literally sewed every basket I made onto the edge of that basket. I said, I am not going to leave out anything. All the hard work I've done, all the different types of weaving I've learned, I am so proud of how far I've come. Somebody's gonna see this. I'm not sure who, but somebody's gonna see this. And I remember thinking that, I'm going to do that. And that's how this contemporary basket came to be. And that's why you can see all the smaller pine needle baskets. The big basket itself has the bark still on, and there's even earrings on there. A lot of our women are now making or they've always have, but now they're coming around back in style. We're wearing the pine needle earrings and the big pine needle medallions and necklaces. Sometimes our traditional practices, they become fads. They go away for a little bit, but then they come back around again, and then sometimes they stay. But I noticed there was a little bit of a change, but then the last 2 years, a lot of the younger girls are actually making this style of jewelry, and it's really nice to see. Oh yeah, and then I've also woven Polaroids onto the edge of that basket because I wasn't gonna showcase Polaroids in the ending show, but I ended up getting them in there, so I was happy about that. Okay, and this one's translated in Paiute, na-na-ma. It means this is the ultimate basket, and that's the biggest basket I was explaining about earlier. This has every willow I've ever touched during the program, every willow I collected, and this is in honor of all my ancestors. Everyone who had a helping hand in raising me, telling stories, taking care of me, and teaching me that cultural knowledge. because it literally took a lifetime to know and understand how to get to this point in my life. And so I'm very, very thankful for that. Okay, and this is a picture of me and my great-grandfather, Dave Christie. And then this is me with his portrait many years later. It's really something special because my great-grandparents all lived to be in their hundreds on my mother's side of the family. So I knew my great-grandparents, and it's the idea of knowing that living a little over 100 years, that wasn't that long ago. My great-grandfather was born in 1890, and he said he was born under the wagon wheel. And that's like my grandpa Ernie. He remembers when the ballpoint pen was invented. He said he never looked back because he loved to draw as well, and so that was his thing. But that gives you an idea of how precious my story is that I'm sharing with you today. So for conclusion and the final thought, so sometimes there are breaks in weaving, and everybody has their own story, and sometimes it's different. And there's no right or wrong way, because that's your journey, for whatever reason that is, whichever tribe you belong to, who your family is, or where that journey goes, basically. And some people need permission from their elders to learn how to weave. They need to get a mentor or a teacher, or to have that experience of knowledge of basket making. And sometimes the natural resources are not there. At one point in time, I went out to pick willows, and the natural resources crew came through and they burned all the willows down, where I knew there was a large amount of willows, and that's because it was a fire hazard and a change in time and season, so all of the willows were gone. Or sometimes they have to cut them down to maintain the roads, or however, depending on where people are allowed to pick. Thankfully for me, lots of the places I went, my uncle, that's his ranch or his land, and he allowed me to pick, and I had permission to pick on those special places. That's my mom's family, so I was really thankful for that. I told him, this is really important. And so he worked with me. And then it's more convenient nowadays. We have everything we need. We can go to Walmart, we can go to Safeway, and we can have a shopping cart to put all of our items in, and it's a piece of cake. So making baskets aren't as vital as they were before for survival purposes. And the idea of a woven basket can mean different things to numerous people, but it's not a vital necessity, as in wearing a basket, taking it to the grocery store, putting your toilet paper in there, and gathering your items, and then keeping it on your back, and then taking it home. So times have changed. And so, with that being said, with my final conclusion, I may never become a master basket maker, because this is a lifetime of knowledge. This is something individuals have learned since they were very little. And they learned numerous styles of weaving, different types of weaving, different types of baskets, and what these baskets are specifically for. And that's okay. All I know is this was a journey I was really excited about. I was excited to do, and I had the honor of learning from my mom, because my great-grandparents knew, they passed that knowledge down to my greats, and so on and so forth, and then now it finally landed with me. And maybe one day I'll be able to teach my children, or my grandchildren. Sounds kind of scary to say, but because right now I don't have children, but maybe one day, and not just my story of how I came to be and my journey of learning how to weave. So with that being said, sorry, turn up a little bit. So I learned to weave at 38 years old. I know I don't look it right. I'm just teasing. My niece says I'm real old. Okay, so I learned to weave by the time I was 38. And my argument was, when I presented this to my class and to my professors, it's important to learn, to preserve, to revive, to combine customary and contemporary arts, forms to ensure our existence, cultural identity for the future, as a Paiute-Shoshone woman. So, thank you.
again so much for listening, because when I presented this presentation last, it was for my graduation mock defense. And after I gave this presentation, they decided it had to be presented, go through a jury, and against with my peers and all these other people. And they even invited special guest critics, well-known artists throughout the country to sit in on these sessions. And in the end, they were the ones who decided if you passed or failed. So it's an honor and a privilege to present this presentation here for you, people from my hometown and my community. So it really means a lot. Thank you.